The dissent around the decision to call for a unified anti-war rally February 19th in Washington, D.C., has historical echoes in the collapse of the Soviet Union. So says Professor Tony Monteiro of the Saturday Free School in Philadelphia. And we spoke with him about that via Skype on Friday. So in the aftermath of this, really in the run-up to this rally that they had last month, and we saw the people at each other's throats on the so-called left, I saw you having a conversation with the folks at the Free School about what happened when the Soviet Union collapsed, how really the left wasn't really prepared for such. I know I wasn't, for sure. To be quite honest, I was shocked. My entire worldview got spun upside down. The left was not prepared to not have the Soviet Union as not just an ally, but an example of the future that was becoming. And, the left is in a horrible shape right now. Maybe you could help to sort of draw a path from there to this mess we're looking at now.
You're absolutely right about the collapse of the Soviet Union. But the collapse of the Soviet Union was not just the collapse of the Soviet Union, it was the collapse of the world communist movement, which in fact was the most important global movement for peace and national liberation, albeit attacked, and attacked by many in the United States who claim to be on the left. However, with the collapse of the world communist movement and of the socialist camp and of the Soviet Union, we experienced a profound and, in fact, enduring fragmentation of the black left. I guess I would even say the undoing of the black left. And of course, we saw it manifested in some ways, in part, if you will, around the question of the march on February 19th to end the war in the Ukraine,
right?
Where a number of, I won't necessarily say prominent black leftists, but nonetheless self-identified black leftists came out against it and against unity of the people, if unity meant that some of them were not in the leadership of the effort. Yeah, but that goes back, some time. I mean, I, having been at that time a member of the Communist Party, kind of saw it up close. And in particular, I saw the transformation politically of figures like Angela Davis, of Gerald Horne, who is very prominent these days. And of course, there were people who were more centrist leftists, such as Manning Marable and Cornel West, who were members of the DSA. And I often like to say they privileged Michael Harrington over Lenin, which, they had a right to do, but a kind of democratic, so-called democratic socialism that was at the same time anti-communist and at the same time a capitulation to U.S. Cold War propaganda and ideology.
Right.
But I guess the more interesting figures are Angela Davis, this huge, huge figure, this outstanding figure politically, this courageous woman, this philosopher who went from being a communist to being what in many ways one could describe as a social democrat / liberal.
Neoliberal even.
I wouldn't say neoliberal. I would say liberal. Neoliberal is something different, I would suggest.
I'm talking about Hillary Clinton support, okay? I don't know how else you characterize that, but okay, go ahead.
I guess I would say supporting neoliberals, including Obama and Hillary Clinton,
Right.
under the guise of lesser of two evils, and the supposed threat of a fascist movement as represented, let us say, by Donald Trump.
Right.
And his followers, especially among white working people. This is a descent that I could never have predicted or expected. It seems that she, among others, could have thought more deeply about how we go forward. And of course, the politics that she represents is not a way forward. In fact, it became, and I think this was not her intentions, it became a politics of supporting war and the neocons without apology to this point.
Right.
On the other side, you have Gerald Horne, and I knew both of these people. I knew Horne much better than I knew Angela. But Horne was in many ways during the time of the Soviet Union and the World Communist Movement. You might, in some ways, have considered him a staunch supporter of the Soviet Union and the World Communist Movement and the line of a world revolutionary process, which meant that the working class and working people and the working people of the United States were the engine of a great movement to transform the world and bring about socialism.
Yeah.
With the collapse of the Soviet Union, I think something profound happens to him. He ultimately writes this book in 2014, declaring that the American Revolution was not a revolution, but in fact a counter-revolution. Gerald, as I followed and read most of his books up to that point, was a niche academic researcher. He was not a public figure as such, but it was with 2019 and the appearance of the 1619 Project that he becomes a big public intellectual and a go-to figure for many on the left. And what does Gerald end up saying? Not only that the American Revolution was a counter-revolution, but that the U.S. working class, especially white workers, are not the allies of black workers, are not capable of fighting for democracy, but in fact constitute a counter-revolutionary, in fact, fascist mass that has to be fought against.
This is the basket of deplorables, in other words.
Well, it is the basket of deplorables. And Gerald ultimately says, because the position only leads you into a corner and into pessimism. There is no strategy of struggle of the working people of this country with such a viewpoint. And of course, he adds to his ideological assumptions this architecture of what is now called settler colonialism. And he refers to the mass of white workers not as workers, but as settlers, and hence as enemies of black folk, of Native Americans, and even of Mexican Americans. This is an anti-revolutionary position, but it is one that has a certain resonance because of the absence of an actual black left. And the rise of this, what I call neo-cultural nationalism, which for decades has veiled itself behind this claim that they were radicals. Some would even call themselves Marxists, but Marxists that synthesize or combine cultural nationalism, that is black cultural identity with Marxism or with revolutionary theorizing. My argument is you have to make a choice. The two positions are ideologically incompatible.
And I'd like to explore that next week because we're out of time and get into it deeper. Thank you very much, Professor Monteiro, and we will continue to explore this for sure. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
For KPFK, I'm Don DeBar.